Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Forum Daily West. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. With the federal government in chaos, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took a few shots at Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. With Chrystia Freeland resigning from cabinet, we asked Sun political columnist Brian Lilley if he thinks Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may be next. And we hear from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, which explains how the federal government's massive debt will impact Canadians for years. Thanks so much for joining us. Political observers say the Trudeau Liberals are heading into the Christmas holiday break in a state of chaos. The fall sitting ended today, but Parliament was upended by the surprise resignation of Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland on Monday. The move has shaken Justin Trudeau's strength as both Prime Minister and party leader, with a number of Liberal MPs calling for his resignation. In fact, one Liberal MP says Trudeau is in a delusional false reality. Now, the opposition leaders are taking things a step further, calling for an election right now before Donald Trump heads back to the White House next month. Prime Minister Trudeau spoke to supporters at a Liberal Party fundraiser in Gatineau, Quebec. Now, instead of addressing the chaos within his own party, he took the opportunity to take a few shots at Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
Pierre Poilievre is uninterested in building more homes, delivering vital supports, creating good jobs, or even, as we saw with his opposition to our GST tax break, he's opposed to even cutting taxes. That's a given with the Conservative Party. But what makes Poilievre different is that he's willing to actively bet against Canadians and Canada. He says Canada is broken while actually trying his damnedest to break it.
Dominic LeBlanc, a longtime friend of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, took the oath of office to become Canada's new finance minister. He will also remain on as Canada's Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. LeBlanc replaces Chrystia Freeland, who resigned from cabinet on Monday after Trudeau told her he was moving her out of finance into another portfolio.
I look forward to working with Canada's premiers as I have for the last number of years on some important challenges facing the country. I'm also thinking tonight of the remarkable women and men who work in the public safety portfolio, in the department and in the agencies. I've been inspired by their work over the last year and a half, and I look forward to hopefully continuing to support them in the work that they do for Canadians.
Now, many Canadians are discussing the current turmoil within the Trudeau Liberal caucus right now. Chrystia Freeland resigning from cabinet, Housing Minister Sean Fraser announcing that he won't be seeking re-election. So we asked Sun political columnist Brian Lilley, will Justin Trudeau be the next one to step down?
I don't think so. But this is the biggest parlor game in Canadian politics right now. It has been for a while. When's Justin Trudeau going to leave? I was talking with one Liberal at an event here in Toronto, and they said, if your finance minister leaving can't kill you off, maybe nothing can. So, is Justin Trudeau remaining the Teflon Don of Canadian politics, where nothing's really going to touch him?
Mr. Lilley will also discuss how a number of premiers at the First Minister's meeting are big supporters of Alberta's oil and gas sector. He'll have details coming up later in our broadcast. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says the clown show that is the Trudeau government needs to come to an end. Poilievre says the more this government spends, the worse off Canadians will be. He also took a shot at NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, saying his actions have been quite hypocritical.
The dollars that our people work so hard to earn, that our pensioners contributed to their plans so much so that they could use, are worth less because of the chaos and clown show of Justin Trudeau and the NDP Liberals. And then there is the NDP. Yesterday, Jagmeet Singh had the audacity to claim that he thinks Trudeau should resign after Singh voted just last week to keep Trudeau in power. I put forward a non-confidence motion which would have fired Trudeau and triggered an axe the tax election. And I put in that motion the words of Jagmeet Singh, and he voted against his own words. And now that those votes are behind him, he changes his story entirely. And of course, the media gives him an absolutely free ride, not questioning him at all on the obvious contradiction of claiming a man should be fired when you vote in the House of Commons to keep him in the job.
As you've heard on Bridge City News, the federal budget deficit has ballooned from $40 billion to almost $62 billion. This will make things that much tougher on Canadians moving forward. We'll be right back with more news from Forum Daily West. Franco Terrazzano, who's the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He joins us now from Ottawa to explain why there may be tougher times ahead for us. Franco, how will this close to $62 billion budget deficit really impact Canadians?
For starters, let's just remember that Trudeau went $20 billion over budget with his deficit, right? He promised that he would keep the deficit at or below $40 billion. The actual deficit, about $62 billion. So that was his own fiscal guardrail, and he just drove his deficit through his own guardrail and went over budget by $20 billion with this deficit. Now, all this means higher taxes. Remember, Trudeau has been trying to paper over his massive deficits by taking more money from Canadians. And it also means more of your money wasted on debt interest charges. So debt interest charges are now costing taxpayers more than $1 billion every single week. In fact, every dollar you pay in federal sales tax now goes to paying interest on Trudeau's government debt.
So, Franco, where are we at when it comes to our national debt?
Our debt is now going to be almost $1.3 trillion. Now, what's so crazy about that is that when Trudeau first became prime minister in 2015, the debt was $616 billion. So in less than a decade, Trudeau has doubled the debt. More money wasted on interest charges, massive deficits, and higher taxes.
So does the government really have a plan in place to lower the debt or deficit? What's the plan moving forward?
That's a great question. I mean, the problem is the government has no plan to save money or balance the budget. Now, you might remember back in 2015, Trudeau said he'd run, a couple modest deficits and balance the budget by 2019. Well, he missed that target by about $20 billion. Now, fast forward, and the deficit last year reached $62 billion. And according to the parliamentary budget officer, under the status quo, the next balanced budget from Ottawa won't be until 2040. So more money wasted on interest charges. And if this government doesn't actually cut spending, well, then Canadians' kids and grandkids will be making payments on Trudeau's debt for the rest of their lives.
Thanks so much, Franco. That was Franco Terrazzano, federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Ottawa. Canada Post trucks, conveyors, and mail carriers are moving once again following a month-long strike. The Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered the 55,000 postal workers to drop the picket signs and head back to work. Still, the dispute between the Crown Corporation and its workers simmers, with issues such as wage increases and a push for weekend deliveries unresolved. The government has appointed an Industrial Inquiry Commission to look into the sticking points and come up with recommendations by May 15th on how a new agreement can be secured. Stats Canada released their third quarter population estimate for 2024 on Tuesday. The national population is now estimated at just over 41.4 million people. Now that's an increase of over 176,000, with 124,000 listed as new immigrants. This has been the slowest population growth seen since the first quarter of 2022. Now here in Alberta, however, our province saw the highest growth by percentage in the country, with a 0.9% increase to over 4.9 million people. That is up another 42,000 since the last quarter. BC, meanwhile, saw a 0.4% increase. Saskatchewan went up 0.6%, and Manitoba 0.4%. Ontario saw a slight increase of 0.3%, and Quebec was up 0.5%. In Atlantic Canada, increases range from 0.1 to 0.4%, and in the territories, they had an average of 0.4% increase. Immigration continued to drive the vast majority of increases as the country's fertility rate hit a record low of 1.26 children per woman. Fresh off the announcement that the Alberta government is phasing out photo radar as a cash cow, comes word that Lethbridge police are implementing 42 additional new photo radar stations at playground zones throughout the city. Now, starting on January the 13th, they'll be set up near city playgrounds and operating daily from 7:30 a.m. till 9 p.m. The Alberta government initially prohibited municipalities from adding photo radar stations, but has since lifted the ban earlier this month. LPS removed 27 stations that are no longer compliant with the new provincial photo radar policies. Now, here's a follow-up to a story we first brought you on Monday. Lethbridge police are investigating a reported threat at the Lethbridge Collegiate Institute. On Monday, LPS were contacted by staff at LCI about a written threat on the school property that directed harm at students and staff on December the 19th. An investigation is ongoing into the severity of the threat and who initially wrote it. Police will continue their presence at the school for the time being while classes continue. Stay with us. More news coming up in a moment. Police in Red Deer were called to 3 bomb threats at city schools. Administrators with St. Joseph's High School, St. Francis of Assisi Middle School, and Pines Alternative School received threatening emails on both Sunday and Monday. Police searched the buildings and confirmed the threats were not credible. They say the emails may have originated from outside of Canada. You know, it's difficult to think that there are people in our world who are intentionally trying to hurt kids. On Bridge City News, we've often covered a number of shocking stories that have taken place even right here in Lethbridge. Thankfully, we have an organization that helps those who've been victims of sexual assault. Christine Cassie, CEO of the Chinook Sexual Assault Center, shares some surprising statistics on sexual assaults committed against children here in our country.
What we know from the stats, both from a prevalence study that was done through the Alberta Association of Sexual Assault Services and stats that we get through policing agencies and child welfare agencies across Canada, is that it impacts about 1 in 3 kids. And so we look at a 34% prevalence rate really for child sexual abuse alone. In the city of Lethbridge, that would mean about 6,800 kids that may be impacted by some form of sexual abuse or some sort of sexual violation. So these are really staggering numbers that we're dealing with. We also know that this is one of the leading issues that leads to, when the trauma hasn't been resolved, that leads to sexual assault later in life. So there's a direct connection of what's going on here.
Make sure you catch the entire interview with Christine Cassie from the Chinook Sexual Assault Center and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. Police say the shooter who attacked a Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin, was a 15-year-old girl who was a student at the school. A teacher and a student were killed in the attack on Monday morning at Abundant Life Christian School. Police say 6 others were also injured. The shooter, who died, allegedly turned the gun on herself. Abundant Life Christian School is a K-12 school that serves around 420 students. Officials say it planned to close for Christmas vacation after this week. Overspending in healthcare is driving up a projected shortfall in Manitoba. The provincial government is expected to post a deficit of $1.3 billion for the fiscal year. That is up around $800 million that was tabled in the 2023-24 budget. The province's finance minister says it is still an improvement from the nearly $2 billion deficit that was posted last year. The government is forecasting $438 million in health overspending, driven mainly by high costs in health authorities. Friends and family of a Saskatoon girl struck and killed by a truck 3 years ago say they're frustrated with the judge's decision to stay the charge against the driver. The judges ruled that the case was not handled within a reasonable time frame. Now, the matter exceeded the 18-month limit due to delays caused by the pandemic. Taylor Kennedy was charged in September of 2021 with impaired driving, killing 9-year-old Bailey Maurice at a crosswalk. Supporters say that justice was not served and the system failed the family. The Salvation Army here in Lethbridge is showcasing an Advent art gallery at their worship center. The artwork, which features prints from American artist Scott Erickson, are inspired of his artistic interpretation of the Christmas story. An official with the Salvation Army says the artist creatively visualizes the story of Jesus coming down to earth as an infant.
His book is actually called Honest Advent. So I think when you look at the paintings, when you read the reflections, it just gives a really raw description of what Christmas meant 2,000 years ago and what it means for us today. The fact that God, in his infinite wisdom and infinite power, would come to earth as a helpless baby. it's something that I think we've lost the awe, we've lost the wonder of it. So that's what we're trying to, I guess, reinstill, is just the awe and wonder of that first Christmas.
You can stop by the Salvation Army anytime between 8:30 and 4:30 p.m. until December 20th to check it out for yourself. You know, many years ago, Moravian missionaries named the Pennsylvania city of Bethlehem after the birthplace of Jesus on Christmas Eve way back in 1741. Close to 300 years later, Moravians continue celebrating their Christmas season tradition.
So the Christmas Putz is a treasured tradition of the Moravians. It is a nativity scene. So all of the Christmas stories displayed with tiny figurines and lights and narration. It's a tradition that started way back in the Middle Ages when folks couldn't read or write as much, but eventually became a tradition that was carried out in people's homes. In 1937, the Putz was started first in the Hotel Bethlehem and then soon moved up to Central Moravian Church, but using some of the antique figurines that were carved in Germany and also some more modern ones as well.
That's your Forum Daily West report. I'm Hal Roberts. Thanks so much for watching.